What was the biggest scandal in your small town? Probably the Brown's Chicken Massacre, where 7 people were murdered at the restaurant over a robbery. Case was cold for 9 years until the girlfriend on one of the murderers went to the police that he had confessed to her. He and his friend were eventually convicted through DNA and a confession. College professor was found tied to a tree and burned months after he disappeared. Police ruled it a suicide. Back in the 80s. During my senior year, one guy in my high school class got 4 girls pregnant in a month-long period. None of the girls were his girlfriend. The guy and his family left town during the middle of the night soon after that. Not much of a scandal, but more of a tragic event. In my small cow town, there was a missing little girl that was found in a suitcase that was floating in a water canal. The culprit turned out to be her neighbor, who also had a daughter the little girl would play with. The entire city was shocked as it hit really close to home. Mayor and several city councilors were taking kickbacks and bribes from demolition, construction, cleaning companies for cleanup contracts after a hurricane. Funded by FEMA. The companies would give the mayor and city councilors like a couple grand. Then the company would get FEMA funds in the tens of thousands to clean up, destroy a hurricane damaged property. Only the address given to FEMA and listed on the contract were fake or already cleared. So the companies got paid to do nothing. There was an anesthetist who worked at our local hospital and another hospital in a different town. He was rather well known among other doctors and known to be good at what he was doing. He only had a small problem with being addicted to painkillers and anesthetics. So to feed his addiction without getting caught, he shot up part of his patient's drugs before injecting the same needle into his patient. Thus went unnoticed until it was discovered that over 60 of his patients got infected with hepatitis, and that he was the source for it. He was fired and his license revoked as far as I know. But the hospital's image still suffered quite a bit. In 2000, a girl's body was found on the steps of the local middle school. She had been beaten, raped, strangled, and burned. The officer that arrived at the scene was a rookie officer. Since he was the first in the scene, the police department made him in charge of the case. The case was massively botched. The murder had shocked the community and a lot of people were talking. Several years later, the police marked it as a cold case. A local woman was doing her own detective work. She reached out to a journalist from the UK. The journalist flew to meet the woman and investigate the murder and missteps by the police. They uncovered a massive cover-up. The local police department was hostile towards the journalist and local, to the point that the state FBI branch had to get involved to protect the investigation. Due to the police department's terrorizing behavior, they ended up getting investigated by the FBI. Apparently they knew who had committed the crime. A local drug dealer, who was cozy with the police. He eventually was arrested and sent to prison for life. The police department got a slap on the wrist. The journalist went back to the UK and the local woman moved to a nearby city. The mayor went to meet what he thought was an underage girl but was really the cops. Around the same time, the son of the bazillionaire owner of the biggest company in town also got caught with an underage girl. Somehow right before trial she recanted and declined to prosecute. Something in the water down there. A visitor shot the town's unofficial mascot, a tame buck, from his motel room. He couldn't believe his luck. He didn't even have to leave the comfort of his motel to hunt. The quarry came to him. Kind of a moron. A few members of a scummy local family broke into a bar, stole money, beer and peanuts, When they went to leave, realized there was a drunk patron sleeping out back on a picnic table. They, thinking he was a potential witness, bashed his head in with a hammer, threw his body into the back of their truck, drove the truck through the old railroad trail and dumped the body in a swamp. They were caught almost immediately because there was a trail of blood and their truck was covered in DNA, all over some cash and beer. Gonna have to go with the woman who killed a 8-month pregnant woman, cut out the baby, and tried to pass it off as hers. Edit. The one from my hometown was Kennewick, WA circa 2008. Second edit. I should give an honorable mention to a more recent, less grisly scandal, and that would be the whole ghost cattle scam Easterday was running. $250 million scam. And a accidental death that sure looks like a suicide. A local chemical manufacturer's mixing plant blew up and gassed the whole town. Everything was fine, just horrendously stinky. But it drew up a lot of controversy over their safety protocols. The company never rebuilt the plant, instead selling it to the city, which I'm pretty sure became a fireman training site, so all good in the end. I am from a very small town in Canada. Very quiet. Nothing big ever came up and it was a fairly tight-knit community. One day, an explosion went off in an apartment building. A 23 years old single mother, who also happens to be a quadriplegic, was killed instantly. The case was eventually solved. The explosion was a gift-wrapped piped bomb left by her former financial advisor. He squandered hundreds of thousands of dollars from her and was convicted for it. He was then released on bail and then left the bomb. Wild SHT. When someone threw a grenade to the police station. I'm originally from a town called Hyde, a few miles outside Manchester. Unfortunately, Hyde is famous for Harold Shipman, the once trusted GP who killed elderly patients by overdosing them with diamorphine. My grandma's neighbor, Jack, was one of his many victims. Side note, he also did my mum's ultrasound when she was pregnant with me. Rip Jack. You were a wonderful man. My home county had a few historic covered bridges. They were quite the pride and joy of the area. Somebody burnt one down. Somebody else saw 3 young men do the deed. Now we all knew it was a trio of kids on my class. Like most schools, we had cliques, 2 of which were the preps and the burnouts. The bridge burners were preps. One's dad was the county judge. One's mom was the primary real estate agent in town. This posed a dilemma, so the parents of the preps, including the judge, hatched a little plan. They gave 3 burnouts in my class $10,000 each, mid-1980s, and the promise of a light sentence of 6 months probation if they would plead guilty and take the fall. The burnouts agreed and took their money. The judge figured if the burnouts didn't hold up their end, he would make sure they found guilty anyway. So they showed up in court in front of the preps judge dad. They not only didn't plead guilty, they had a speeding ticket dated the same day and time as the time the bridge burned. But the speeding ticket was for 70 miles away. And since all 3 were minors, all 3 were named in the ticket report. The judge had no choice but to dismiss the case. And the parents of the preps weren't even mad because that was enough of an excuse to effectively end the whole investigation. Nobody got in trouble for it. It all just went away. The bridge was rebuilt. The placard was changed to say, "Replica of a historic bridge." And for $10,000 those precious little boys didn't get a black mark in their records. At one point, the FBI busted the local cops for smuggling cocaine. I'm from a very weird small town. So this for sure isn't the biggest, just a really funny one I remember from years ago. My friend was a senior in high school and had a longtime girlfriend who was also a senior. While she was on vacation with her family, he had sex with another girl in his girlfriend's bed. His girlfriend didn't know about it until it came out that the other girl was pregnant with his kid. He admitted to hooking up in her house while she was gone. His girlfriend ends up forgiving him and gets pregnant about 3 months later. So my 18-year-old friend has gotten a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old pregnant within a couple of months of each other. A few months later, before either child is born, he gets arrested for possession of marijuana. The arresting officer was the 17-year-old's dad. He ended up losing a college sports scholarship because of it. He still lives in that small town and is not with either of his baby mamas. And his kids are in the same class. The town only has a few thousand people. So it was pretty scandalous. A cop murdered his wife and got away with it. Shockingly, he did it again to the next wife and now he gets to die in jail for it. The local drunk got into an argument with another regular at a popular bar, pulled out a gun, and shot the other guy to death. But that's not the scandal. The guy who died was apparently really nice and well-liked in the community. The others in the bar were able to disarm and restrain the assailant until the police arrived. When the sheriff got there, he just said, "Looks like you all need a few more minutes with him. I'll come back later." So everyone in the bar grabbed what they could find and ended up beating the shooter to death. The sheriff reported it as self-defense and the security tapes disappeared. But the bar was crowded, so the real story got out. There were a few attempts to reopen the case or charge the sheriff and some of the bar patrons, but they were all squashed pretty quickly. The really interesting detail, in my opinion, is that there were some pretty strong rumors that the drunk had been sleeping with the wife of the man he killed and that he'd been attacked first, so the original shooting may have been in self-defense. But because there was no camera footage and all the witnesses were involved in killing the drunk, there's no way of knowing the truth.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.